Cool. Josh, thanks so much for coming in early. I know it's a very long flight for some of us to get here. Also, again, thanks to all of you. I know some of you took, I think, 3-leg flights just to be here on time. So really appreciate that. Cool. Okay, we have a really exciting lineup of panelists, especially because these are some of the newest DAOs that are kind of launching in the DeSci ecosystem. Cool. Maybe to start off, can you each maybe take a couple of minutes to tell me about your respective DAOs and research areas and kind of what motivated you to build them? Rohan, maybe we start with you.
Yeah, I mean, motivated to start the Long COVID DAO by having Long COVID. And so now we're trying to build some of the resources to rapidly bring cures to people who need it. And this is one of the places where we're hoping to find collaborators and friends to do that.
So my motivation, I've been personally biohacking for 10 plus years. It got triggered by me facing a huge burnout when I realized, oh, well, I actually have a body and like I should be actually looking after it. And there are things that I can do to my lifestyle and otherwise that have a really huge impact on how I feel and how productive I am and whatnot. So I've been going down the rabbit hole for a very long time. I've been in crypto for a number of years as well, since like 2016. And then it all came together at the beginning of this year at the Vitalia pop-up city that Lawrence here was talking about, where I met with other people kind of as crazy about this space as myself. And we just realized, well, wouldn't it be nice to build something together that really focuses on promoting citizen science in the space of biohacking on self-enhancement or whatever you call it, and that's how BiohackerDAO came to be.
So I didn't get to give my presentation on SynapseDAO, but SynapseDAO is trying to build a decentralized pharma protocol. It's attempting to use Web3 and DAO and token technology, but to basically scale up the existing pharma sort of mechanisms, in particular to bring a lot more funding to translational research. The idea is to maintain some of the sort of rigor that pharma uses using the existing investors, the existing markets, the existing capabilities in the existing industry, but to bring a lot of that on-chain and allow decentralized participation in the entire process. Participation in terms of deal sourcing, participation in terms of participating in the research and governing the eventual products that are released or produced through this, but also participating in the revenue share or the value creation in the pharma process. So it's basically trying to take the existing pharma processes and bring them on-chain, not necessarily as a replacement to pharma, but just trying to update and upgrade, kind of bring the old into the new.
Well, thank you so much. So finding patients or researchers is often really difficult, and actually connecting them as well. And so I'd be curious to hear from each of you, and I know the answers here are probably very different. Like before having the idea to start your DAO, you must have kind of been a member in like various online communities or various kind of stakeholder groups in the case of Synapse. Yeah, I'm really curious to like, can you tell me or the audience a little bit about kind of the current existing community, like pre-DAO, and where people are, what they do, and kind of what their challenges are, and then how you help to actually solve those through the creation of a DAO around them. Anyone who wants to?
I can kick it off, yeah. I mean, I think, well, first of all, taking a step back, I didn't mention this in my short presentation earlier, but I mean, I was a neuroscientist before in academia, so I think I saw some of how trials are traditionally done. I started healthcare companies where we ran our own clinical trials, so kind of the traditional model of how you do clinical trials is something from a corporate perspective and also from an academic perspective that I've been familiar with. With Long COVID, I think it's such a new thing, we don't really know what's going on. And so every day, if you're active on Twitter, which I'm sorry if you are, but if you are, then I think you see that people are every single day looking for cures. They're experimenting like myself to try to find anything that we can do to make progress on this new disease. And so I think there's just a lot, certainly across disease conditions, but definitely in Long COVID, of interest and energy in finding ways that we can start to move the needle forward faster than traditional government funding sources are doing.
I love this question. So if you're a biohacker, you will already probably know that the best online resource out there is Reddit. And like really this amazing. I'm so happy it exists, but it's also really shit at the same time. So like if you want to know like how to optimize your glucose levels, you go to like glucose subreddit and you like scroll through it. You find something that a guy says that's like not really supported by evidence. It's like his personal experience, and then other people are like commenting on it, and somebody's upvoting the comments, and like you're hoping that some truth is emerging out of that, but you don't really know. It's not really data driven. It's not really rigorous enough. Even though it's a start, it's a good start. And also, people don't really have the right incentives, I think, to contribute in a way that could take it to the next level. So they are not paid for it. They're like moderators that are doing it for free, and there's a huge churn. And it's like there's something there you can see. But then I've also been a member of a lot of DAOs, not in DeSci, so there's a new thing, but like DeFi DAOs for the past 3 or 4 years. And I've seen like, oh, this is really cool. There are people trying to coordinate there as well, but they actually have incentives and they have a token that rewards contribution, and they're able to recruit like really high quality people in the space and build stuff together and get it done to a much higher level. So for me, that was like a trigger of, well, shouldn't we apply this kind of model to the group of biohackers that already exists?
So the SynapseDAO is an interesting sort of program at the moment because there's on the one hand the on-chain aspects, right? So you can consider me the on-chain aspect of SynapseDAO, right? And then on the other side of SynapseDAO, there is the very much more institutional side of it. So the two co-founders, Scott and Simone, who couldn't be here today, they are very, very busy. They both work at and have previously been acting CSOs of Novartis, a massive pharma company. And so the connections that they have, the experiences that they have, and the people that they're working with right now to come into the Synapse protocol, into SynapseDAO, are from a completely different world, right? Like, so I'm crypto native, right? And that's why I'm on the team. I'm here to help with tokenomics and DAOs and all of that stuff. But the existing community that we're referring to here, I would say, would be Synapse's existing community, which is actually traditional pharma clients. This is people who are working in pharma, people who are procuring pharma assets, companies that are using these pharma assets and getting early stage research put out. All of these companies are actually surprisingly interested in what's being built at SynapseDAO. It's something that is incredibly surprising to me, is that they are very bullish, not just on tokenizing IP or tokenizing assets, but they're bullish on using crypto as a way to fund some of these larger ventures, including like funding pharma assets. And they're really excited about using Web3 for improving sort of making it more efficient to do these larger pharma acquisitions of products and turning those products into marketable assets and using those assets and selling them to clients. The entire thing is really exciting to a lot of these, old heads, right? So it's something that surprises me all the time when I hear from Simone and Scott about the meetings they're having with these large institutions, that the community that exists in pharma right now wants that innovation. And, we all know DAOs are very exciting, right? And so we're all part of that. But the thing that I didn't know is just how much the outside wants to come in. And so maybe where there's a bull run, we'll see all sorts of institutional clients coming in and getting very excited about these sorts of things.
Hopefully before the bull run.
Not financial advice.
It's the bull run.
Not financial. This was equally really surprising to us when Pfizer began contacting VitaDAO in like mid 2022. So just after a year that it launched, and it took about 6 months, and they were the ones constantly pressing to join VitaDAO. They eventually then joined the scientific and deal flow working group, and then it's like 6 months later, wanted to kind of invest into the organization. So that was really, came as a big surprise to us, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if we can replicate a lot of that. Maybe a quick show of hands. Who is in like longevity or biohacking or any kind of patient Reddit community? Okay, so that's actually, that's quite a lot. I'd say probably 50% of people raise their hand. And so I think one of the easiest ways to understand this is BioDAOs, or these on-chain scientific communities, are essentially Reddit communities now with a bank account and with the actual opportunity to create and manage an IP portfolio in the same way that a pharma company would or a biotech company would. So I think that's really exciting. Josh, you just began talking a little bit about the kind of the fundamental value proposition or the value creation process. I think it'd be really interesting to hear from each of you how you believe that BioDAOs or your DAO in particular can actually kind of create something of value, and kind of what we sometimes describe as like DAO market fit. Like, where's the DAO market fit? So like twofold question.
Yeah, I think ours is quite a simple value proposition because again, it's just using the existing infrastructure of pharma building, early stage research, taking those assets, making them into something viable, turning them into a company, and selling them to big pharma. Right, that whole process is pretty well defined. What SynapseDAO does is it allows two things primarily. The first one is it allows people to participate in the, I'd say, revenue share, right? It's a controversial topic right now because of regulatory environment, but the revenue share, right, of all those assets that are created, they are essentially being, a portion of that revenue that is created is funneled back to SynapseDAO in the form of like an index. So as a regular everyday investor, you don't have to be an accredited investor, you don't have to be in pharma, you can still get exposure to these growing, diverse, like, assets of like pharma assets, right? So you can get this index exposure to these different pharma assets, which is something that you can never do before in this sort of like early stage way. Maybe once it goes to like once it goes public, then you can do so. But now you can do so at the initial research stage. So the first thing is getting exposure to the value creation of pharma assets, and the second thing is actually being able to govern or have a say over what gets researched and how that research is then sort of carried out and who it's directed towards. And so this DAO participation, which is what the BioDAOs are built off of, right, is like having some kind of ownership or at least some kind of say or governance over the process. And so taking this existing system and having a say over it and having some of the money that's generated from it is the big innovation here.
And if I can just comment on that, I actually think that targeting this we can think about pharma what we want, like in a broad sense, and about the system, but they are the fundamental still creators. They are the fundamental, not creators, but the entities that bring drugs to market. They have the ability to fund stage 3 trials, which is super expensive. But what really often happens in the early stages of pharmaceutical development is that assets get stuck. They're deprioritized. Someone makes a budget decision and is like, okay, we can only do this one. These 3 assets get shelved. And then often what you have is you end up with a lot of shelved assets where there's a patent that's running, and the thing could fundamentally turn into an early stage drug or an early stage pharmaceutical that could help patients, but it's just been deprioritized now. It sits there. There's a lot of sleeping IP. And I think for an organization so DAOs here can have the fundamental advantage that they can develop these assets potentially, or we identify them at a much lower cost. So you have experts, an expert community that forms in a DAO such as Synapse, and can go out through BD relationships, identify those assets, bring them into a DAO, develop them for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and actually then spin them back into the pipeline. This has been done very successfully by an organization called Roivant. If any of you are familiar. Roivant was actually built by Vivek Ramaswamy, the presidential candidate. So yeah, that's the same business model. So super interesting. Sorry.
Okay, so the question was, how do we know we have a DAO market fit, right?
So the question was, how do we have a DAO market fit? And what is the fundamental value creation process that you envision for your DAO?
Gotcha. So I think the question of DAO market fit for us, it's pretty simple. So it's all about, are we providing value to our biohackers that they cannot find in other places? The way we measure it is how much are our members who are biohackers engaging with the different activities we are doing, whether it's conversations inside the group, or more importantly, whether they are signing up for some of the decentralized trials or experiments, whatever you call it, that we're creating. So those are some very important metrics of engagement. And also whether they are then helping us grow the DAO and recruit actively by word of mouth other members to join. And the answer is yes, because that's been basically our only source of growth so far. So those are some of the signals we would be looking at. And then the second part of the question, so how is the value created? So out of having all of these people in the same room, and these are people who are already collecting large amounts of their own biomarker data through smart devices and otherwise, we are able to create incentives to aggregate that data, make it useful, and then run our own decentralized experiments on this data and generate some knowledge. I was talking about some examples of that earlier today. And B, then we also have the ability to essentially license that data to third parties, like healthcare companies or AI startups that need biomarker data to train their models, and allow them to generate novel products or knowledge on top of that.
Yeah, and I think with COVID research and funding in particular, and the pandemic happened, billions and billions of dollars were allocated to vaccines, to antiviral drugs for COVID. A lot of really huge pharma companies made a ton of money on this, and then all that funding disappeared. And so what you have with long COVID is, on the one hand, a lot of large pharmaceutical companies who actually do have some drugs that they could bring to market are simply not, because the monetary incentive is no longer there. And then on the other hand, you have long COVID clinics all over the world, which have wait lists of 3-6 months, a year, and many, many patients desperate for something to treat themselves with and just waiting in this kind of perpetual limbo. So,
And if I mean, and I guess the treatments that are in the pharma pipeline are all patented, and so no one is allowed to work on them or even do anything with them.
And even if you approach some of these companies, they're not willing to sometimes license the thing because it's just too much, overhead for them to deal with thinking about this when they're really focused on whatever drug is going to drive their bottom line in the next quarter or quarters to come. So, there's a huge financial misincentive here. Meanwhile, a huge amount of human suffering. And so I think, how do we know that we have product market fit? I don't think we know. We're a brand new DAO. But I would hope that all the people that I talk to who have long COVID, who are so excited to hear that we're doing research and moving quickly and trying to actually bring things to market, I would hope that that's a sign that we're on the right track.
100%. Maybe just a following question to that. What do you think the role of patients can be in some of these DAOs in terms of like contributing to data creation, potentially signing up early on to a trial, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I can kick it off. With long COVID, people are, as I said, already out there trying things, and so engaging that community, coming at it from the perspective of a patient, I think helps, because oftentimes people feel like they're being taken advantage of, and that's a real thing that's out there. And so being able to at least have some kind of credible argument to say, look, we're not just trying to make as much money off of your suffering as possible, but instead we are in the boat with you, and actually we are sharing incentives with you such that we are all aligned in the same direction and sharing decision making as well. I think that's putting your money where your mouth is, whereas everything else about, we empower patients that every pharma company out there says is all just really bullshit for the most part. We're trying to make it real, I think, in this community, and that to me, I think, is actually meaningful.
At BiohackerDAO, you probably thought about this as well, but I would guess, or I would assume that there's really cool tokenized models that we can build around how biohackers or patients can probably be applied in a similar vein, could contribute data to a DAO and in return be rewarded in ownership and governance tokens in the DAO. Is that something that you guys are playing around with?
100% yes. So actually, we've been very lucky until now that people have been very happy to join our studies, contribute data, even without a token reward, which just shows us how highly motivated these people are.
If I can quickly comment on that. So I think this is so cool. And one of the reasons why I think BioDAOs can be, in some sense, vastly superior than biotech companies, it's that people are online on Reddit anyway. Meaning that there's Reddit communities with hundreds of thousands, millions of people, super smart people that are anon and that are just contributing knowledge because they care, right? They're there every day commenting, moderating themselves, and creating a corpus of knowledge for free. If you create a biotech company, you have to pay millions to get expert advice, to get expert due diligence, to collect patient data. hundreds of millions. And here you kind of, people often do it in these communities, at least they do it out of the sheer interest, sheer curiosity, or kind of goodwill of their heart to contribute to something bigger than them. And I think that's something that is very hard to replicate in the business world today. So just wanted to chime that in.
It's 100%. So like we have been actually very fortunate to be able to tap into that. But then the answer down the line in the near future is yes, at scale, to really incentivize the kind of amounts of data we need, and especially certain types of behaviors or certain types of data sharing that are otherwise hard to get. Yes, we need to have this token that can reward people. And it also works both ways. So then also this token can be used as a kind of method of payment or as a gating device for people to join the group. So actually, out of the 200 people that we have in the community, basically each one of them has contributed either labor or money to buy the token and join the group. So they're basically already finding the knowledge that we're generating valuable enough to pay to access it. So that's going to be the second side of the, so to say, marketplace down the line. And I think at scale, when it's powered by this token, it's going to work really, really nicely.
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing about the tokens is that they're brand new, right? Like it's a brand new technology that we've just sort of figured out in the last few years. And all of these different use cases are going to be incredibly, the difference it's going to make in terms of people's contributions to science and people's contributions to, in particular, patient care, and the incentives that they get for making themselves healthy and for making other people healthy is something that we're not even sure what it will look like in 5 years' time. Like the way that people will contribute data towards a collective data set which can produce these new therapies and get paid to do so, and how that downstream effect continues is going to be really incredible. At SynapseDAO, we're sort of focusing on the two easiest, in my opinion, sort of like most base level use cases of a token, which is governance and like monetary rights. Governance, we all know governance. It's something that we are at SynapseDAO very passionate in bringing people who have an expert opinion or an expert knowledge on the particular disease area that's being focused on. So SynapseDAO, you can spin out a specific season, and a season is about a specific disease area. So it could be about Alzheimer's or breast cancer or whatever. And each of those seasons, the token holders can participate in, but as a token holder, you can also delegate your stake to somebody else who doesn't own the token, so they can participate in the knowledge creation, in the sharing, and also the value sharing as well. So patients that have been affected by these things will probably just be cheering on from the sidelines, right? Hoping that these wonderful people will do great things for their treatments. But those who are directly studying, patients that are also studying, right, scientists in particular, those who have an expert knowledge or opinion and whose even their patient experience who can provide value can actually join the conversation without owning any tokens because of this delegation mechanic. So the point of this is that like the tokens are a financial instrument which benefit the holder, which benefit the DAO, but also can actually bring new people in even without them having to pay. So lowering that barrier is something that we think is really important to keep the expert contribution high, but actually, keeping that value accrual as well, because the whole thing's a brand new incentive that we're really trying to play around with.
Awesome. So I have two more questions, and then I want to open it up to some questions from the audience. First of all, and maybe this can be a long answer or a quick one, what do you feel is your biggest challenge in building your DAO, or just also in your your area of research?
I'll start, because I mentioned value sharing, revenue sharing a lot. That currently is, in my opinion, our biggest challenge, which is the regulatory environment. In our team, Simone, who's the co-founder, he's an Italian guy. We use this analogy, which is that when you're building a new car, a Ferrari, right? When you're building a Ferrari, you build it to go 250 miles an hour. You don't build it to go 80 miles an hour, which is the speed limit, right? So we're building this protocol, which we think in 5-10 years' time can be this massive decentralized pharma protocol with these wonderful fee sharing mechanisms. But right now, the regulatory environment says, don't do fee sharing. So do we build the car to go 80 miles an hour, or do we build the car to go 250 miles an hour, like a Ferrari, right? And drive it up at the speed limit until that point. And so that's what we're going for. We're going for, building a wonderful, wonderful car and then just going to drive it within the speed limit for the moment. But the uncertainty around all of this is actually probably our biggest challenge at the moment for the next year or so.
That's something that's unique to most of crypto. Yeah.
I would agree with that. That's a big one. But then also like awareness and making people understand what the hell this intersection of science and crypto means, and like why do you have to use crypto, and is it a scam? And like people that are really deep into science or biohacking, many of them, they don't understand it, or they have got this kind of gut reaction. And then there's the other crowd which is like really deeply into crypto. They are happy to invest in tokens, join DAOs, but they are like highly speculative. Their mindset is, their like time frame is like 5 minutes. They want immediate return. So like, it's not the kind of person I want in my DAO. Like we've really been trying to avoid them, but they're the easiest to onboard. So like, how do you target like an intersection of people that understand both? And that's, I think for now it's very small, and we need to grow that pie.
Really well said, and also what I think is, what we found one of the largest challenges. It's actually one of the reasons we created Bio, because I think for us, Bio almost can create not a barrier, but a membrane between the two, where the DAOs that are behind Bio essentially are somewhat protected from like open speculation, where Bio has a much deeper liquidity depth. So that means less volatility for individual DAOs, and Bio is just much more broadly accessible from a value prop. Rohan.
Yeah, I think those are important mechanisms. And yeah, I would just echo actually what you just said. I think crypto, unfortunately, has a toxic brand and for a lot of people. And so how do you overcome that? I actually don't know the right answer to that. That was a question Adam asked a little earlier. I think that's the biggest challenge, though, trying to understand how do you communicate why you need crypto at all to somebody who doesn't even really understand crypto and really just wants to get better or help their friends get better or family get better. I think that's the biggest hurdle.
I can tell you what, I think biotech has a liquidity problem and crypto also has a liquidity problem, meaning that in biotech at the moment, there is not nearly enough liquidity so there's a huge liquidity crunch that has been happening ever since actually the vaccines dropped off and ever since like 2022. Conversely, in crypto, I think we also have a liquidity problem, meaning that liquidity is going to like a lot of the wrong places. And so for me, actually, I think DeSci can really be a way to rebrand parts of crypto into actually having impact to people that really need it, which are patients and scientists. Yeah, Josh?
I really agree with that. And I think the thing I'm most excited about DeSci is that crypto is inherently like money and transfer and exchange, right? And that's really, the financialization is super important for all of these applications, including DeSci. But crypto is also like a mindset shift towards like self-sovereign ownership of your things, of yourself, of your data, of your assets. And I think DeSci is when DeSci succeeds, it will be the thing that wakes a lot of people up to being like, oh, okay, I can own my own something, right? I can own myself, I can own my own data. Right now, like owning your own assets, it's like, well, the bank has it, like what's the problem? It doesn't make as much sense to a lot of people, but I think explaining why we need crypto is going to become easier once we have use cases like DeSci. And that's what I'm really excited for, because it's a mindset thing more than just finance, right?
Hang on. Are you guys saying that saving lives is more important than Dogecoin?
I think they can both exist. Why not both? Cool. So we have about 3 minutes left for questions. If any, you can also shout your question and I'll repeat it if you have one. So the question was, how can we grow the number of active members that are in each of the DeSci DAOs? And kind of saying that like we have a lot of DAOs already, but not that many active members. I would disagree to some extent. So I think if you actually go deeply into the Discord, I think DeSci DAOs are active in different venues. BiohackerDAO, for instance, has a super active Telegram. Couple hundred members, I'd say maybe 100 active.
Yeah, around
Roughly?
there. Yeah.
which is not huge, but also if you go into most Reddit communities, there's I don't know, 100,000 people, probably 2 to 5,000 that are, I would say, that are quite active. So you always need to see it in percentages. And then there are other DAOs, like the Hair DAO's Discord, for instance, is also super active. I do hear your point, though, that compared to other crypto protocols, DeSci DAOs is still relatively small. I think it's because in DeSci, actually, no, I'll let you guys answer the question.
Can I say so? Yeah. So I think the problem is not just DeSci. It is most like prevalent in DeSci for sure, because it's the earliest and has the least amount of funding. But across all of crypto, DeFi, DAOs, all of it, is there's basically no consumer-facing applications for anything, right? We just spent like 5 to 6 years building infrastructure, which is great because now we have good infrastructure. But now we need something to actually like appeal to people to come and interact with. BiohackerDAO, I'm super excited about because there are so many people who like to do this sort of thing. And if you can find a new system, like a financialized, tokenized system that people can participate in, that's super bullish because that's consumer, right? Like it's an individual can get involved. AI infrastructure is cool, but again, you need consumer-facing products for that. DeFi infrastructure is great, but you need consumer-facing products for that. And so some of these bio DAOs in particular, I think are super bullish because it's allowing people to participate, a consumer to participate in the research process, in the value creation process, even just to look from the outside, like with Catalyst, for example, right? Just join and get an inside view into what these scientists are doing. That's the sort of thing that I think is going to bring more active participation, which is like a consumer-facing product, because we don't really have that anywhere in crypto, and it's just beginning to happen in DeSci and in other places as well.
I would maybe have a slightly contrarian view on this, but I think actually many people have a misconception about this. So a lot of DAOs, they're trying to onboard everybody to be a builder and to be a governor. So they're trying to, like the main activity that the DAO is doing is governing itself. And I think that's bullshit. It's like people are way too busy to like read governance proposals there all day and they don't care enough. So you're maybe going to get like 5% of people who are very active in governance. And I think that's fine. That's probably the right ratio. And the other 95% of people, you should conceptualize them as users or customers or consumers. So for example, in our case, if it's a biohacker DAO, like these people, the 95%, they are there to discuss biohacking and like share whatever experiments they are doing on themselves and like get inspired from others. And you need to gear the conversations and activities that are happening there mostly towards that. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think that's why, as Paul said, like our group probably appears much more active than many of the other average DAOs.
I think that's correct. And we saw that even with earlier Web 2 iterations like Wikipedia, where there's 5% of people that are doing 90 or 95% of all the work, and finding ways to incentivize them is interesting, and I think is going to be super helpful. Did we want to do one more question?
Yeah. So another question I have is, I know we're building out data, and I was reading an interesting book about vaccinations in Africa. And it was for malaria and a few other things, and they were vaccinating children. But the studies, that they couldn't conclusively find whether the vaccination was causing more death in children from the vaccination than it was saving lives. So, I mean, I'm just wondering, have you guys considered that as we proceed forward, how do we also balance this? You know, we're moving forward, making positive changes, but at the same time, we also have to consider the effects of what we're releasing into our community. And the second thing is, crypto is a fun place. There's even a Solana token for Mpox, and everyone's aping it. So there's some crazy stuff that's happening there. But yeah, I mean, maybe memes could be also, I'm not saying go into it, but, there are ways also to kind of like capitalize on DeSci and just bring the name out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a concern that people have a lot, particularly with the COVID vaccines, right? And I think, one, it's just trust levels in general, people not trusting corporations who, over the last, 50 years or 100 years, have typically not been the greatest champions for human beings and value profit over everything else. And so how do you trust someone or something that does that? That's a fundamental problem, right? And I think decentralized science has a way into starting to address part of that problem. And in regards to, vaccines and data. I think you just need to look at the data for COVID, for example. There are adverse effects from vaccines, and that's real. It's just that they're like an order of magnitude less than actually getting COVID, the virus. So, I think keeping an open mind and following the science is important. And hopefully, some of the mechanisms we're using now will let people trust what we're collectively building and giving to people and offering people as medicines more than we have in the past.
And on that note, fun fact, did you know the COVID vaccines are, the Pfizer ones are sealed for 55 years, like the data that came out of the clinical trial? Like essentially everyone who got the vaccine will hopefully be dead by the time the data is released about them. So on that note, thank you so much for joining us for the panel. A big thank you to our panelists.